ASEAN Breakfast Call. First and foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Hey, this is Arlene.
Hello, this is Grace.
And together we make a team to talk about news today on Southeast Asia.
That sounds pretty exciting, Arlene.
It is exciting. Every morning it's exciting at Durian ASEAN because we really focus on Southeast Asia as a whole and not just about Malaysia.
And also we try our best to bring the most informative news to our listeners.
Mm-hmm. So before we start the news, just a quick shout out to Malaysians out there, just for being Malaysians.
You sound so enthusiastic this morning, Arlene.
No, actually, I was just being a bit sarcastic. But actually, a lot of people do not know today is Chinese National Day. And when I say Chinese, meaning people, China as a whole. So we already had our National Day.
That was in the August and also
South Korea and Malaysia.
That's exactly right.
And today is China's National Day, and it marked the independence of China, not from colonial control, but more from China forming its own political system that is free from its monarchy.
Mm-hmm. And then China had their own dynasty for a long time. And then now they formed their own system. And then this is their China National Day, the 1st of October.
Mm-hmm. So 1st of October, the Chinese people are definitely geared up towards its own holiday, even though Hong Kongers are out there on the streets protesting against Chinese authorities taking over their own mainland.
And the people there are still very angry about this current situation right now, and the more more people are joining this protest apparently.
Mm-hmm. So we are talking about Hong Kong. Hong Kong has been quite amazing country when it comes to trade and investment and economic achievement, even though it's just a small island. But it is still part of China. So I'm not sure whether they are celebrating the Chinese National Day or not.
I don't believe so. With the current situation right now, it's pretty not easy, and then with a lot of tensions going on, it'll be not easy to celebrate the China National Day on today.
Mm-hmm. So with the Chinese National Day, which somehow being celebrated all over China. I'm not sure about Hong Kong, but in around the world, let's go back to Malaysia. We have the situation that is a bit controversial, which is the dope test.
The dope test where Malaysia is to challenge dope test on the disqualified Asian Games.
So Malaysians, one of the medalists in Malaysia, from Malaysia, she won the Asian Game Wushu in gold. But unfortunately, Tai Chiu-shen was disqualified because she was tested as negative when it comes to the dope test.
And it is pretty shameful news they brought to our nation in Malaysia that she actually was disqualified due to the drug test, and she could have won the first gold medal at the Incheon South Asia.
Representing Malaysia.
Exactly.
It is really sad that for her to unable to get her goal, for disqualified for failing the drug test. Not sure why she failed the drug test, but this is what she tweeted. I believe the process was compromised. Our athlete unfairly stripped of gold medal. We will challenge this decision all the way. #Asian Games.
And also, by addition to that, Tai was reported to have tested positive for a stimulant, sibutramine, after winning the women's sports on the event of September 20th.
So, it's quite serious for any athletes to be tested negative.
And especially when it comes to international games such as the Asian game, and this is competing a nation to nation against a nation, so it can actually bring a big controversial and
definitely it would.
It's very sensitive,
especially for a gold medalist to be tested negative. It shows that they are just simply two opposing scenarios. It's either she really took a pill of Panadols, who knows, or any other drug-related food or beverages, or the result could be compromised. But for people in Incheon, the authorities in Incheon, to compromise the result is somehow highly unlikely.
Yeah, and then the rules and the policies that they are pretty strict on
Very strict.
This kind of cases. And also, she is the first Malaysian medal winner to be caught for doping in the Asian game history. So this is quite a bit of a shameful news to Malaysia history.
It's quite shameful, unfortunately. The other news that is also a bit shameful is about China. Of course, earlier on I mentioned about the Chinese National Day, but the British authorities has told off China. This is what they said: seek peace in Hong Kong and allow freedoms.
Exactly.
Because China has been very stubborn in the case of Hong Kong, has been very quiet, but at the background, who knows, they are still pushing through to make sure that they get access in terms of the nomination process for any political candidates to administer Hong Kong.
And also China and Hong Kong, they've been, Hong Kong was under China for years, and it's not also easy for China to release Hong Kong like that just to give the freedom. But on the other hand, Hong Kongers, they really want to stand up for their right, and then this democracy freedom under freedom from China actually. And also Finance Chief George Osborne urged China to seek peace, like you mentioned, and also be dependent from China regarding freedom.
The British has for a long time been ruling Hong Kong since it was been annexed from China during the Opium War. And the British has installed their own system, which is very different from the Chinese communist system, which focuses more on the one-party system. For the British, they believe in democracy, as in you have to have multiple political parties, you have to ensure that you uphold freedom of speech, and of course, the system is very much Westminster's system in a way that is very different. Hence, the people of Hong Kong has been brought up to always see themselves as to be more British when it comes to political system than being more Chinese from the mainland side.
So since Hong Kong has adopted British the structure to their nation, that also the Osborne added by saying that it is concerning situation, of course, that Hong Kong is angered because of their freedom of when it comes to democracy from China. And he also said, I don't want to add to the tension, but he thinks Hong Kong's prosperity and the future is dependent on some of those basic freedom around their freedom to protest and the freedom to participate in their government, and which is strongly he's supporting the freedom on the citizens of Hong Kong itself.
One thing China have to realize, democracy or the system where it is very much a British political system when it comes to Hong Kong. It is part of the Hong Kongers' identity. When you strip away that sort of political system where freedom is the utmost sacred means for the Hong Kongers, you are stripping away what Hong Kong identity is all about. It's quite frequent in Hong Kong for them to do protests, to demand the government on various things. So they would be at loss if out of a sudden they have political leaders from China to control how they should think, how they should lead their lives.
It is very irony to see this situation where Hong Kong did adapt to quite many parts of the British system, but at the same time they're under the Chinese policy, which you mentioned way before, the one country, two systems. So that's when the Hong Kongers are actually standing up themselves for in terms of getting the freedom and that they have and also to have their own rights separating from China.
That is why the British Prime Minister David Cameron, he is very much concerned about the situation as tens of thousands of pro-democracy protesters extended blockage of Hong Kong streets. And as we all know, when it comes to David Cameron, he was the prime minister that actually decided to allow Scotland to make a choice whether they want to stay in the UK or they want to be on their own. And of course, the Scottish has spoken out. They want to be with the UK. They have faith in England, Wales, and Ireland.
Actually, no matter how much the tension they had between the Britain and the Scotland, it was just a recent event. But then at the end, they gave the fair amount of freedom to Scottish people to actually vote, and then it was fairly done on the democracy system.
Anyway, this is what is being said by the student Liu Qingying is a Hong Kong student leader. He's a Hong Kong leader. He said that he is giving an ultimatum to come out and address to protesters before midnight on Tuesday, which is yesterday. And the protesters, they are mostly students, which is very, very much a very hopeful prospect for Hong Kong to see young people to be actively participating in demanding democracy. And they have been calling the Hong Kong leader Leung to step down because they see him as more of a puppet for China or a proxy power for Chinese to take control over Hong Kong.
So like you said, we could see a slight bright a ray of hope there, that all those youngsters do stand up of themselves in terms of demanding the full democracy and the freedom from China.
But nevertheless, Leung has said that Beijing will not back up in the face of protests. It has branded, in fact, China has branded this particular protest as illegal, and said that Hong Kong police will be able to maintain security without help from People's Liberation Army troops from the mainland China.
Because security comes the first, no matter what the violence, because a lot of violence can occur in this situation.
But whatever it is, the biggest loser will not be the people of Hong Kong. The biggest loser will be China and also the administrative, the Chinese at the Hong Kong administrative, partly because Hong Kong is the business district of Southeast Asia and also Asia as a whole. So to have Hong Kong democracy being compromised, it will only result in lower business and lower economic gains for China as a whole. And China do not, we spoken out earlier with Gauri, me and Gauri, we understand that at the end of the day, for any nation state, money speaks louder than anything. So for a country to have lesser GDP just because it compromises the democracy of its citizen, then the best solution is to better stay off from Hong Kong.
And also, you said the money speaks, but then it also brings the power at the same time. Money brings the power because even though Hong Kong is just a small island, it's got the it's still got the high potential when it comes to economic status, and then that actually adds a lot of status to China. So, like you said, that it'll be a big lose to China if this case happens continuously, and eventually they lose Hong Kong eventually.
So, from Hong Kong, we move on to Indonesia. As we all know, the new Indonesian parliament is set to be reactionary. And Indonesia, of course, is setting out its new parliament, and of course, in November, Joko Widodo will be heading the parliament as the president of Indonesia, and it will be convened today, not in November, in the 1st of October, and is shaping as severely reactionary under the sway of de facto opposition leader Prabowo Subianto, whose red and white coalition is threatening to curb the nation's counter-corruption commission.
And also, Dr. Yudhoyono, his legacy badly tainted as a result, met his cabinet again it was yesterday, seeking a means to undo the bill, but without the obvious prospect of success. So even if a president refuses to sign the bill, it becomes law 30 days after passing.
Mm-hmm. So anyway, the president refused to sign the bill. It becomes, yeah, like you said, and the opposition coalition has been further bolstered by the Constitutional Court refusal to review the so-called MD3 law, another bill with strongly retrograde element. So there's so many different laws, and these laws are definitely having all the opposition, all the different political leaders to challenge it. And of course, Prabowo, being the leader that still want to be on power, is definitely hoping to challenge this MD3 law.
Yes, and also the bill's passage on the Friday. It was on a Friday, just engineered by the Mr. Prabowo coalition, but then humiliatingly for outgoing president, it was enabled by more than the 120 MPs from his Democratic Party refusing to vote.
Mm-hmm. So just a bit of a background on the MD3 law. The judicial review of the law, which is the MD3 law, was filed by the PDIP, which was represented by its chairwoman Megawati Soekarno Putri and Secretary General Jaja Kumolo. And during last 2 days hearing, Constitutional Court Justice Aswonto said that the 1945 Constitution did not specifically regulate the best mechanism for determining the House Speaker. And in fact, this is what they added, that they do not apply the parliamentary system where a House Speaker should come from the winner of the legislative election. The mechanism to choose the House Speaker is up to the lawmakers to decide. And with that, it seems like the situation in Indonesia is kind of a mess, as we see that different party is trying to gain hold of the parliament by questioning the law itself.
And also the opposition coalition has been further bolstered by the Constitutional Court refusal on Monday to review so-called MD3 law, like you mentioned, and another bill with the strongly retrograde elements.
Mm-hmm.
And then the MD3 law itself, it allows the dominant coalition to control by blocked voting the most powerful officers in the new DPR. And the law also attempts to shield MPs from prosecution by requiring the warrant from the Parliament's Ethics Committee before they can be questioned.
Mm-hmm. A lot of people are questioning this law, especially Prabowo. But this law is really important for Jokowi, especially having to rule a very diverse nation like Indonesia, where a lot of dissent voices will definitely hamper the rule of Jokowi itself. And with that, we move on to a news that is about another threatening news. Not a piece of law, but really, actually, it's a piece of law, but it's a piece of law that is somehow shared by many people in Southeast Asia. I guess it would be more on the fear side. This would be Sharia law. And it is threatening the LGBT rights across Muslim-majority Southeast Asia.
So this growing religious conservatism is threatening LGBT in Muslim-majority nations across ASEAN, and with a new report claiming serious abuses against Malaysia transgender community, and this has brought a lot of anger and chaos among this community itself, because they are not treated as the equal human beings, and they are always misunderstood and mistreated by the government itself.
Mm-hmm. And from this is what is being said. Malaysian authorities frequently abuse transgender women at the expense of their dignity and violation of their basic rights. This was being uttered by Boris Dietrich, LGBT rights advocacy director at Human Rights Watch, in a statement on Malaysia's religious department and other state officials have license to do whatever they like with transgender women.
But after all, like I mentioned, that these people are also human beings. Rather than being abused by government and with aid of violence, it has to be under consideration how they should be treated, and how government has to approach, and how it has to send out the message to people to look at this community. And in fact, Malaysia is a 60% Muslim nation, where 13 of 15 states have invoked Sharia law to ban transvestism among Muslim men. And 3 states also prohibit women posing as men. And these states are loosely defined and leaving gaping loopholes for abuse, venality, and vindictive prosecution.
Just a bit of the background. The Human Rights Watch has published the I'm Scared to be a Woman, Human Rights Abuses Against Transgender People in Malaysia, which, as you mentioned earlier, make serious allegation on physical and sexual assaults committed against transgender people while in official custody. A few cases that you mentioned shows that Malaysian authority really believe LGBT is not natural. It's not something that is in line with the Quran's message, whether it's true or not. But there are some people, for example, Faiza Riza, an activist for the Violent Grey LGBT advocacy group, hails from Aceh, now based in Indonesia capital Jakarta, said that Shariah's law make society feel free to take action or use violence against LGBT people, especially transgender people. So religious authority are using religion, or in this case Sharia law, to act like as if the law is under their own purview.
And then, in fact, this Sharia law usage of Sharia law is Sharia law is increasingly becoming harsh towards all this community, and it's becoming worse and worse.
It's definitely becoming worse and worse, and
so it also comes with the discrimination eventually.
And with the Sharia law, another area that needed more attention is, of course, the improvement. I mean, in any country, besides in terms of its race and protection towards its race, religion, gender. Of course, in any country, business and economy is the utmost important. And with that, India's business with ASEAN countries only sum up to 30% of trade. This is actually very, very low, considering India is the closest that we have, as well as China in terms of superpower with really huge market to tap into.
And also, India is a part of RCEP, a Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, and the largest economic partner across the world, which is more than 10 countries, has a great potential in the enjoying trade benefits with neighboring countries. But India's trade with ASEAN countries is only 30%.
It's only 30%, and it's not doing much in terms of various areas of trade that India and Southeast Asia could tap into. Southeast Asia somehow look towards East Asia or China more, less towards the Middle East or even South Asia. And for India, having one of the largest population, of course the largest would be China, the second largest population in the world, is a market that Southeast Asians should understand, should somehow come into and bring forward, all these different trade instruments and all that. As we all know, India and Southeast Asia's relationship is not something that is very new. It has been going on since probably centuries ago. If you know about the history of the Hindu-Buddha kingdom in Southeast Asia, from Indonesia up till Myanmar and Vietnam, and Cambodia, shows that Hindu culture or Indian people have been coming and trade with people in Southeast Asia since a long time ago.
So historically, there are the facts that the free trade agreement has been going on, and then also in the future with the current situation that India has grown so far, this agreement in goods and services actually can help to boost up the economic growth and as well as business potential between ASEAN and India itself.
One of Singapore's focus in its budget last year was to tap into the technology of ICT, and India being one of the best in terms of ICT and industry and sector should definitely be part of the focus of Southeast Asia.
Look into the consideration, definitely.
Instead of looking to China, Japan, and South Korea alone, Southeast Asian should, especially Malaysia and Singapore and Indonesia, should tap into India and understand the development of ICT. They produce one of the best graduates in information technology and communication, and these are elements that can boost Malaysia, especially Malaysia, as we are looking forward towards the vision of 2020.
So more communication is needed between India and the ASEAN countries, where they can actually look into to further and improve economical growth. And in terms of a certain industry, as one of them you mentioned was ICT industry.
Mm-hmm. And one of the area that they are trying to address is the India-ASEAN connectivity, challenges and opportunities for the northeastern region. This was conducted in Shillong, and what is one of the area that definitely they are going to increase more is the shipping cooperation between Southeast Asia, which would focus on Myanmar and also India.
So that will lead to focus more in this area, like transportation, infrastructure, and a lot of development of connectivity between these countries.
Myanmar and India is just stone throw away. It's very near to each other, and not just Myanmar, the whole of Southeast Asia is very, very close to India. And for example, in area like Manipur, it should develop as a multi-economic zone, and Mores should emerge as potential economic growth. There are many areas in India that are really springing out to life and becoming city where there's a huge market to tap into, a lot of consumers and a lot of growing middle class. But at the end of the day, it's not just about catering towards the growing middle class. It's also, of course, it's about developing human society as a whole. So that's definitely important in building different industrial zones and integrated infrastructure.
So in the future, it'll not only be 30% of total ASEAN trade. I hope to see the more percentage from between the trading between India and ASEAN countries.
Definitely. With that, that's the end of our discussion today. Thank you for listening to us.
And don't forget to download the TuneIn app and find the Durian ASEAN. And also you can listen to us at durianasean.com, our website. And don't forget to leave us the feedback on our social channel on Facebook, and as well as do look into YouTube channel as well.
Thank you very much, and listen to us later on. We will discuss about the budget 2015, what's in for Malaysians.
Thank you.